closer. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. It's me, Patricia Handbitch, your horticulturist, and my favorite assistant, Sprout. So today we are repotting orchids. So I don't know if you grow orchids or aspire to grow orchids, but they are really cool to grow. Who do you know that used to grow a lot of orchids?
Your mom?
My mom, which is who?
Nana?
Nana. Okay, so the great-grandmother used to be an orchid fancier. She used to always say when she would teach other people how to grow orchids that you have to be careful because growing orchids could be addicting. So anyway, it is October and it's only about 13 degrees centigrade out, so it's not room temperature, and the orchids have been outside all summer long, and it's time to repot them and move them in. So first, a little bit about orchids, and I've got a variety of different types of orchids. Yes, I'm wearing the blue gloves because I like to protect my hands, but also there's a tremendous amount of bacteria that's on your hands that can be transferred into the media or onto plants themselves. So at any rate, orchids that we grow in our homes for beauty, and their blooms last a long time, and believe it or not, they're not really that difficult to grow. What you need to do, as you do with any plant, is mimic the conditions where that plant normally would live, and in that way you're giving it the best care that you can. So orchids that we normally grow are epiphytes. So what's an epiphyte? Do you remember?
Not even a clue.
What do we plant orchids in?
A type of soil?
A type of media, right? Because orchids that we grow in our homes for their beauty and grace are epiphytes. So epiphytes are plants that don't need soil to grow in. So plants that need soil to grow in are called terrestrial plants. And we do have orchids that are living all over the world that actually are terrestrial in nature, so they grow in the ground. But these orchids that we're repotting today actually are epiphytes, so that means that they get their nutrition and their moisture from
Air?
the air. Yeah, good job. There is something happening up there. So yes, epiphytes get their nutrition and water through the air rather than through the soil. So I'm just going to grab an orchid here to show you. So orchids have roots and shoots just the same as other plants, but this one, these are the aerial roots that actually hang on to the trees where the orchids live, and they coexist symbiotically, not needing the tree to allow the orchid to live, but they hang on to the tree for support, which is one of the reasons that plants grow in soil, right? Is to anchor the plants. Well, these plants are anchored in the tree itself. So this is a Cymbidium, and it actually, see, I've got a tag here, and it actually dates back to 2004. So this is actually quite an old orchid, and generally I only repot after they've bloomed, but this year it was busy. So I'm repotting before they go inside for the winter, and each orchid needs slightly different media. So we've got Cymbidiums, we've got what do we have here? Oh, here we've got a hybrid that is fragrant, and this one dates back to 03. So some orchids have these pseudobulbs which actually hold a little bit of moisture, so they don't need as much moisture, but some don't have those. This is a frag, so it's got a flower like a phalaenopsis, and notice there's no pseudobulbs. So these frag orchids actually like to be in water all the time. So what else do we have? We have Oncidiums. So these are both Oncidium orchids, so they have the pseudobulbs, so they need less water. And then we have some phalaenopsis and some Paphiopendulum that are the lady slipper orchids. So we've got quite a bit of work to do. And I would like to get it done today, so we better get at it. So right here I've got the media. So I don't know if you can see that. It's a mixture of sphagnum moss. Okay, so that was just dried sphagnum moss that I have moistened. These are just a pellet. They're like the extruded clay Lyco pellets, but these you can buy as watering stones, and they're just basically a porous rock that will hold moisture. Then I've got fir bark. So this is a medium grade fir bark, and it's just a media that is not soil or soil-less mix, right, that the orchids will live in. And then I've got some fine fir bark in here as well. So you see it's kind of a mixture of a lot of different things. I have had this soaking for quite a number of hours, so it's well hydrated. I wear gloves because there's a lot of different bacteria that are on your hands, and that's Zeus, eh? A lot of different bacteria that are on your hands, and I like to keep them clean. So what you do is you basically take the orchid out of the pot. Thanks, honey. Zeus is protecting us, so that's not a very good specimen. Okay, let's do this Paphiopendulum. Okay, so here we've got the orchid. We've got the tag. This one dates back only to 15. And you want to have another container to dump the orchids in so that, you know, you can get the orchid out. So this one doesn't have a lot of healthy roots. So these roots are just not very healthy, and they can be cut off. And I use sterile scissors. You take off any, you know, leaves that are not healthy. And I clean them off, I swish them around in water and dip them in. And then you take a nice clean pot. Have you got a pot for me? A smaller pot? And what you do is, oh, a small one. Little one there. You got a little pot in there somewhere? No. These are orchid pots. So they're clear so the roots can get light. And here's another example of an orchid pot, and this has slits in it so the roots actually can get air. So like terrestrial roots, orchids need air and warmth, and in this case light, so the roots quite often green up. So anyway, I'm ready to plant this one up, so I'm going to put a mix of the media, and the media you'll have to kind of work with because you mix a number of things together. And what I like to do is mix things together that suit my care regime for the orchids. I generally water the small orchids about once a week, sometimes a little more often depending on the humidity of the house. And those with pseudobulbs get watered less often and need a little bit less care. But I like to keep my orchids somewhere in high humidity. So basically you get some media in there, and you pack the roots in and make sure that it's quite well packed because you don't want the orchid able to move around. So it's just like media in a terrestrial plant, that it actually needs to anchor the orchid in place. And I really like to repot outside if possible. So it's a nice chore to do, you know, before it gets really cold. So here's this nice little Paphiopendulum, and as you can see the media is quite wet, and depending on the amount of roots, most of the time they have more roots than that, and you really pack it in. And as I said, I like to wear gloves because it's very drying for your hands, but it also stops the orchids from, you know, getting subjected to whatever you might have on your hands. So that's basically the procedure you use. And as with any plant that I'm transplanting, I always like to water them in with a dilute high phosphorus rooting solution, which you can make out of whatever fertilizer you have on hand, as long as the second number is slightly higher. So these are going inside now under lights, and gosh, I love the plants inside and outside. I humidify my house, so my house stays above 70% humidity, which the plants love, and there's a lot less pest and disease problems. So that's kind of the basics of repotting. I will do a repotting of another orchid that we often buy when we're out shopping and that kind of thing, in the little love the ice orchids or whatever they're called. They say put an ice cube into water, or 3 ice cubes for the big ones, and I'll show you how to repot those too, because quite often when you buy a plant, it's not in a type of media that is actually going to allow that plant to survive long term. So did I cover everything, Sprout? Yes? Okay, so thank you for joining us. My name is Patricia Hanbidge. My oldest, dearest friends call me Patty Plant, and here's Sprout. Here she is. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. I come to you once a week on the Facebook Orchid Horticulture Facebook page live, and you can catch us any time of the day or night on the YouTube channel Grow. So thanks for joining us. I hope your fall is going wonderful. Wherever you are, I hope you're happy, you're staying safe, and you're growing great things. So thanks for joining us, folks. See you next time.